Alarmed by potential restrictions to their free speech rights, some California community college professors now employing the aid of an advocacy group to combat the mandatory teaching of controversial political views in their school system. Represented by the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, 6 Fresno area community college professors are challenging the legality of newly implemented teaching guidelines by the California community colleges system that require its more than 54,000 faculty members to profess anti-racist and DEI ideologies in the classrooms. You must say these things. Plaintiffs argue that the community college system, forcing them to teach questionable views that they do not agree with, is a violation of their First Amendment rights, such as mandating professors inform students that cultural and social identities are diverse, fluid, and intersectional. Here with us to discuss this is Campus Reform Higher Education Fellow Ken Tashjy. Ken, thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you very much, Steve, for having me.
I mean, it's inevitable, isn't it? Somehow the fringe got their hands on the steering wheel of the school bus, and they drove it right over a cliff, teaching questionable things and really trying to indoctrinate, not educate, but indoctrinate young people to believe a whole host of things that simply have little, if any, relationship to the truth. Where am I wrong?
Well, I don't think you're wrong. I think we all presume was higher education was supposed to be about information, not indoctrination. But that absolutely has been the case over the last 15 to 20 years. And what's concerning to faculty in California should be concerning to faculty around the country. That you've got a governing board of the California community colleges that have passed regulations that specifically and directly violate the free speech rights and academic freedom rights of faculty. And it does it in two ways. One, it requires faculty to endorse and espouse DEI principles in their instruction. And it also restricts faculty from offering any alternative viewpoints that may contradict the DEI dogma of the day. And really what they're trying to do here is enlist faculty to be an extension of the DEI officers on their campuses to now be deputized as DEI officers in the classroom. And it should be concerning to all faculty.
It should be concerning to everybody, not just faculty,
Sure.
Everybody. You know, here's the thing. The state dictating to every local school and school board and teacher, here's what you must teach. There's this crazy idea, Ken, called local control of school districts to teach local tradition, local values, American tradition, American values. Is that just something of a quaint old past?
Well, it shouldn't be, but in the higher education level, it's seen a little bit different than the elementary or secondary level. And in California, its Board of Governors for community colleges has authority to set policies and procedures. But they don't have the authority to set illegal policies or procedures. And that's really what the crux of this litigation is about, that the state, acting through the Community College Governing Board, is using a very heavy hand here to both compel speech by faculty as well as restrict speech by faculty. And that type of conduct by the government has been unconstitutional for a very long time. If you are unable to compel students to say the Pledge of Allegiance in a public school, then there is absolutely no way the governing board of the community colleges in California should be able to compel faculty to insert into all of their instruction diversity, equity, and inclusion principles.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? I mean, it just, for a lot of folks, Ken, and you know this, they get overwhelmed. I mean, they're being assaulted from so many directions any given day that they're like, they're overwhelmed. They've flooded the infield with garbage and nonsense and nonsensical talk and concepts that have no basis in reality oftentimes. And people have to pick and choose their fights. That's part of the plan here, Ken. Just overwhelm people and get them to throw their hands in the air and walk away. How do we prevent that from happening?
Well, it's a challenge, particularly in higher education, where when you look at the sort of the range of conservative viewpoints among progressive viewpoints, conservatives are probably outnumbered 40, 50 to 1. But the reality is we got to keep trying. And you see this across the board. You've got faculty within the community college system in California that drew a line in the sand, whether they agree or disagree with DEI principles. The point is the government should not be able to dictate what an instructor teaches in the classroom. You also see it with someone like, I believe it's Riley Gaines, who's pushed back against the transgender community, and the assault on her was evident, but her efforts to push back are very important. We just had a letter of agreement between 13 college presidents around the country involving, I believe, Rutgers, Notre Dame, and some other important institutions. And these presidents have agreed to start putting forth more protections in and around speech on campuses and creating more diversity of idea on campuses. We spent the last 30, 40 years talking about racial diversity on campuses. We probably would have been better off spending that time talking about ideological diversity, which is a much better way to prepare all students for working in our society.
Sure. The idea of higher education, the idea of going to university, is the robust exchange of ideas. And you're supposed to be able to go there and debate your ideas. And if you have a better persuasive argument, you might win somebody over. Today, if you have a better, more persuasive argument, you might get beat up, literally, or you might get canceled, or you might get called a bigot. You might get thrown out of school because you have conservative views. There is no diversity of point of view. In fact, most conservative students, and there are plenty, sit silently in these lecture halls and don't push back because they don't want to fail their class and they don't want to upset the teaching assistant or the professor, and they go along so that they can get out of college, you know, with their transcript in one piece. I'll give you the last word.
Well, look, I think, you know, this is very true. And but what we've seen over the last few years have been individuals, students, faculty, administrators beginning to push back. And they're doing it with the assistance of national organizations like Campus Reform, or with the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, or the American Council for Law and Justice. There are a number of those organizations out there that will stand in the breach with these individuals and push back. And that's really the starting point. We can't get complacent, and we really have to serve this has to serve as an example to other faculty, particularly around the United States, not to allow the government to intrude on the sanctity of the classroom and the manner in which you convey information and instruct students.
Yeah, it's disheartening for a lot of us, Ken, but we have to keep fighting and pushing back and standing up and setting the record straight. Over and
Absolutely.
over and over again, no matter how tired we get, that is our job every single day, Ken, and I appreciate you doing your part.
Oh, Steve, thank you very much for having me.
Greatly appreciate you being here. All right. After the next break, Republican J.D. Vance counters the mask mandate by introducing the Freedom to Breathe Act. That's coming up next on America's Voice Live.